All right, let's talk about some. I want to talk. I mean, obviously, like there's some very broad themes that I want to talk to you about. I mean, all of them in one form or another deal with saving not just our democracy, to the extent that we have had one, but also trying to improve on it going forward. And all of the stories that we have this week, in one form or another, it seems to me, play into that in a way that is almost explicit. Like for I've been doing this for years, and it has been quite apparent that like there has been this sort of like creeping fascism. Even this week, the failure of Democrats or society at large, I'm talking the media too, to hold the Bush administration responsible for violations of the Hatch Act 20 years ago are coming back to bite us in the ass just this week, it seems. But let's start in Chicago. These ICE raids have gotten bolder and bolder. They were threatening to go into Chicago, and Pritzker, I think, did a very good job of basically, at the very least, posturing in a way that we're not going to roll over for this. Mm-hmm. And at one point, there were reports that the Texas National Guard was starting to stage outside of Illinois, and Pritzker said, "You're going to meet the National Guard from Illinois, and we'll see what happens." They seem to have backed down, but ICE still feels like that they are trying to prove that they can do this stuff regardless of what mayors say, what governors say. This raid is, I think, probably one of the boldest that ICE has done to date. They used supposedly Black Hawk helicopters to drop in on the roof of an apartment building in Chicago. They supposedly had FBI and DEA. This is a big apartment building in Chicago. They ended up arresting 37 people. We don't know anything about these people, but listen to this report from Eyewitness News, ABC in Chicago.
I spoke to one woman who actually lives in this building, and she says she was detained by ICE agents overnight, and she says they took everyone and then asked questions later.
They just treated us like we were nothing.
Patricia Fisher says she came out to the hallway of her apartment complex on the corner of 75th and South Shore Drive in her nightgown around 10 Monday night, only to find ICE agents yelling police.
It was scary because I've never had a gun put in my face. They asked my name and my date of birth and asked me did I have any warrants, and I told them no, I didn't.
She says she was then handcuffed and released around 3 a.m. Fisher says she was told if anyone had any kind of warrant out for them, even if it was unrelated to immigration, they would not be released. Citizen-App video shows the chaotic scene overnight. Neighbors tell us there were dozens of ICE agents. Neighbors like Ebony Watson says they ducked for cover as they heard several flashbangs go off.
They was terrified. The kids was crying. People was screaming. They looked very distraught. I was out there crying when I seen the little girl come around the corner. Because they was bringing the kids out too. Had them zip tied to each other. That's all I kept asking. Where's the morality? Where's the human? One of them literally laughed. He was standing right here. He said, them kids.
Watson says budget trucks and military-style vans were used to separate parents from their children. Other neighbors say they saw agents destroying property to get in the building.
And they had a big 15-inch chainsaw with a round blade on it, cutting this fence down. We're under siege. We're being invaded by our own military.
The FBI did confirm this morning that they did help the U.S. Border Patrol carry out a targeted immigration enforcement operation in this area, and they say they have been supporting these efforts at the direction of the U.S. Attorney General.
Let me read a little bit from the Chicago Sun-Times report on this. I mean, this is just absolute nuts. Armed federal agents of military fatigues busted down their doors overnight, pulling men, women, and children from their apartments, some of them naked, residents, witness said. Agents approached or entered nearly every apartment in the 5-story building. U.S. citizens were among those detained for hours. On Wednesday, toys, shoes, and food were still in piles in the building's hallways. Property managers were seen throwing mattresses and broken doors into dumpsters. The Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, FBI, Bureau, ATF arrested 37 people. DHS said some of those arrested, quote, are believed to be involved in drug trafficking and distribution, weapons crimes, and immigration violators. That's a pretty low standard. The feds claim that South Shore neighborhood was, quote, a location known to be frequented by Tren de Aragua members and their associates, but DHS gave no evidence to support the assertion. Authorities did not confirm that any of the people arrested were members of the Venezuelan gang. Alleged Tren de Aragua members have been charged and detained in the city recently as August, but the Chicago Sun-Times found little evidence tying them to Chicago. Roderick Johnson, 67, one of the many residents detained by federal agents during the raid, a U.S. citizen, he said agents broke through his door and dragged him out in zip ties. Johnson said he was left tied up outside the building for nearly 3 hours before the agents let him go. I asked the agents why they were holding me if I'm an American citizen, and they said I had to wait until they looked me up. I asked if I had a warrant, and I asked for a lawyer. They never brought one. They used flashbang grenades, as we heard in that video. Watson, one of the people living there, said she saw agents dragging residents, including kids, out of the building without any clothes on into U-Haul vans. I think it was actually budget vans. And kids were separated from their mothers. Stuff was everywhere. You could see people's birth certificates and papers thrown all over. Water was leaking into the hallway. It was wicked crazy. Jones, who lives on the 4th floor, said most of his neighbors were Venezuelan and often took turns cleaning the hallway because the property owners did little to maintain it. They were cool people, Jones said as he looked into his next-door neighbor's unit. They didn't speak a lick of English, but we used translator apps to talk to each other. Classic Tren de Aragua activities in taking care of the public spaces in their buildings.
Just that one other paragraph there I think is important too. Jones and Johnson said they believed the landlord would kick out the remaining residents from the building, which public records show had previously received code violations. Owners of the property could not be reached for comment. This is the second story we've covered where a sort of seemingly slumlord landlord basically has blamed Tren de Aragua for the dilapidation of the buildings and are using supposed gang activity as a pretext to both neglect the tenants there and then try to kick them out because clearly they may want to raise rent. I mean, this is an epidemic.
Yeah, man. I mean, you know, when you look at the building, and I know a little bit about Chicago, not a lot, but that sort of building, you could presume it's in a lower income community with people who are, you know, working class, you know, living their lives with their families, with their children day to day, going about their business, and for no reason at all come under attack by ICE and our federal government with pipe bombs and the trauma of their children and the families and the people that have to go through that, who did absolutely nothing wrong, and probably many of them have never probably gotten in trouble with the law at all, and they have to live through that. And I would also say that if there were, you know, if this building was a crime-ridden, you know, building and community, one of these residents probably would have mentioned something like that. Oh, we've been having problems with our neighbors, and, you know, because you know, in my experience, many people aren't shy to say, you know, these immigrants, they're doing this or that or whatever. But that's not what I heard. I heard innocent people pretty much trying to figure out what the F is going on and why are you coming after us? And the story of the 67-year-old man is what we're seeing again in cities across the country. You're detaining and asking questions later. You have him in zip ties, sitting for 3 hours only to let him go. Are you going to fix his door? Are you going to fix any of the doors that were broken? No, I mean, this is, again, you alluded to it in the intro. It's like, you know, many of us have been warning about this kind of thing for many years. And now it's here. Like authoritarianism is here. We are living through it right now. And yes, Governor Pritzker has been pushing back. Mayor Johnson has been pushing back. But this is what half of America, almost half of America voted for. And now we have it. And it's freaking scary, man. Like it really is scary. And it can happen in any city, any community at any time.
I mean, I at one point it's going to happen here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're already starting to see ISIS, out in like, maybe in Bed-Stuy, maybe up in the Bronx.
Yeah.
And it is no mistake. Well, there's two things that are happening. One, we know that there's a chunk of the immigrant population is going to be living in areas with more poverty, lower income, in buildings like that. That aren't necessarily being serviced by.
Generally speaking, yes.
I mean, broad strokes. But also, we also know that the non-immigrant population there also has less political power, right? Like nobody's coming in to do a raid like this in a building in downtown Manhattan or something like that. Because they're going to piss off people who are going to be able to immediately get on the phone with a congressman or a city official. So I imagine we're going to see this in maybe sort of the outer parts of some of the boroughs and more low income places in this city. What would you do? Like, I mean, this is the thing. It's like both. From a citizen perspective, but also from the perspective of somebody who is like a congressman, what do you do in that instance? And it's not like the New York Police Department and nor the Chicago PD is particularly like known for its good relationships with immigrants and low income people, and particularly Chicago. It's got some really bad history, but.
Yeah, man, I mean, listen, right now I have the privilege of having served in the House of Representatives, right? And so that privilege comes with maybe law enforcement treating me differently. But I also have instincts as just being a person who has, I have little sisters and children, and I used to be an educator, so I'm a very protective person in my nature. And so, I mean, this year we've seen Senator Padilla be tackled by ICE agents in California. We've seen babies being ripped from mothers. We've seen mothers tackled right here in New York City and at the courts. Brad Lander's been arrested multiple times. We've seen other elected officials arrested multiple times. My instinct is to get in between. I'm talking Jamal Bowman's instinct is to get in between the agents and whoever they're trying to take. In addition to that, and this is kind of what I've been doing just on my own time, just ensuring that communities like the one we just saw are connected to the right resources and the right people, including members of Congress. And so, Make the Road is an amazing organization here in New York that has like lawyers at the ready to support families and whatever their needs are. Yesterday, I got a random text, from an immigration lawyer saying, hey, migrants are being texted to go to this random facility in the Bronx to have their paperwork dealt with. And it was, and she was like, something seems fishy about this. This is off. So I texted everyone I knew, right? AOC, Senator Gustavo Rivera, Carl Hasty, everybody, just be like, hey, like Bronx residents are receiving these texts. Can you look into this? And, they looked into it and they was like, yeah, my staff is saying like, this is bogus. Tell people to stay away, et cetera, et cetera. So ICE is trying to like set people up in these sting operations to go to a random place and get snatched up. And that's the other thing, right? Like, the Trump administration promised us that they will go after the hardened criminals, right? The people, looking to bring harm to American citizens, quote unquote. And they're going after innocent people, man, who are just going through the process of finishing their paperwork so they can become citizens, and it needs to be repeated over and over again. Coming here seeking asylum does not make you a criminal. Like, seeking asylum in the U.S. does not make you a criminal. You're allowed to do that. We have laws in the books that support you in doing that, and then we help with the paperwork so that you can become a citizen. Trump is treating every single migrant as a criminal, treating naturalized citizens as a criminal, and now we're going to see him treat black people as criminals, as he has always done anyway.
Well, can you talk a little more about that? Because I'm seeing how broken windows policing is basically now being federalized. And
that's broken windows on like steroids.
I mean, they're literally breaking windows. But it's just this merging of using, say, the expanded powers after 9/11, right? The war on terror, the Patriot Act, the increase in surveillance, that federal policing, and merging it with things like, the gang databases that have kept so many communities in cycles of poverty, and using that as justification to deport people. And it feels very much like the way that communities of color and poorer communities and cities have been treated by local police. They've taken that in the Trump administration and put it on steroids to use it to purge and really ethnically cleanse these communities of immigrants.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it's not just the ethnic cleansing of immigrants. It's the, and I never thought about it in these terms until you just asked this question. It's almost like the ethnic cleansing of black American citizens into the prison industrial complex.
Right.
So that they can work as slaves. And so we're talking about communities that have been historically neglected, historically underfunded. We're talking federal policy like redlining that has historically devalued these communities, and globalization where manufacturing has gone overseas in a race to the bottom in many of our blackest cities like Detroit or Philly or Yonkers. And people were left with no economic opportunities and more police, right? Mass incarceration started decades ago under, I believe it was Nixon, and then on and on and on. And so that's the history of it, and it's still happening today. And what we've seen that works, and again, if the Trump administration was serious about this, but we know he isn't, what works is investing in hyper-local solutions in those particular cities, like what Mayor Brandon Scott is doing in Baltimore. We see violent crime way down. What Mayor Johnson is doing in Chicago, violent crime way down. It's happening in places across the country. And what we know, and again, we got to continue to say this, when you look at murder per capita, violent crime per capita, death per capita, the numbers are higher in red-led states and red-led counties, not in Democratic-led states and counties and municipalities. We have to keep saying that, yet Trump is doing nothing there, right? So this is, and again, is very scary. And what I have talked about and seen from people in the African-American community in particular, we're just kind of, falling into like self-preservation mode. Like, let's just do whatever we can to stay out of the way so we don't get caught up in everything that's happening, but they're going to come for us anyway, right? Which Chicago's an example of that.
Yeah. I mean, this is the immigrants are the sort of the low-hanging fruit of the day. At different times in this nation's history, it's been other marginalized people. In other countries, it's been other people who had marginal political power. Just to the point that Emma, that you were making in terms of like the stop and frisk, there's a lawsuit. There was this Alabama construction worker. Maybe you saw the video. He was beat up by ICE in May. and he had shown them his real ID, like literally the real ID, the new one, that is basically your federal papers. And they didn't believe it was legitimate. It turned out it was. He then went back to work, a construction worker, U.S. citizen, and then they got him again. Did the exact same thing on a different job site. He is suing now in a class action suit demanding unconstitutional illegal immigration enforcement tactics cease. And in response, the Department of Homeland Security put out this statement. DHS law enforcement uses, quote, reasonable suspicion to make arrests. I mean, you're
brown
laughing.
Skin.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
brown skin is reasonable suspicion.
Exactly. It is not probable cause. There is no, that is a novel use of reasonable suspicion to arrest people. Reasonable suspicion is when you can maybe search a car and find something that provides probable cause that a crime has been committed to make an arrest. What makes someone a target for immigration enforcement is if they're illegally in the U.S., not their skin color, race, or ethnicity, which is exactly the opposite of what DHS submitted to courts in California when they wanted to go after. Like, you're speaking Spanish? That is reasonable suspicion that you're an undocumented immigrant. You're working, doing like some type of like landscaping, reasonable suspicion, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where we are at this point.
Well, you mentioned Arizona, right? I remember many years ago. I forget how long ago it was, right? But
there was a show me your papers.
Yeah, show me your paper.
SB 9.
Yes, SB 9 is state law. That was like, well, I can pull you over and ask for your papers, and you better have them on them and show me. And that was like under this reasonable suspicion idea, and the reasonable suspicion was, okay, you have brown skin, you might be Latino. What's crazy about this, man, and it's just, I mean, everything is crazy about it, but like, I remember going to Laredo, Texas, to meet with CBP down there, to really, and this was before, so this is my first term in Congress. I'm like, okay, let's get to the bottom, and I want to really understand what's happening with migration. So I went to Laredo, Texas, met with CBP, and then I literally went to Guatemala and Honduras with Ilhan and Corey, and shout out to my former colleagues, because we wanted to understand mass migration from the roots of it, right? And what we found was just extraordinary. We found indigenous people in Guatemala and Honduras who were literally like occupying an indigenous space to stop the multinationals from coming in and destroying their ecosystem completely, because it's the destruction of these ecosystems that lead to 70% poverty, no education system, no opportunity. And so they migrate and leaves them vulnerable to drug trade and the gang stuff and all the stuff that happens in these places. And so they migrate to get away from that. But the multinationals are Western multinationals, Canadian, European, American, coming in and destroying these places. And I mean, remember when it was...
And this is part of the legacy of us doing that militarily.
This is U.S. policy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? And even just recently, who was it? Hillary Clinton that said, went to South America and said, we're open for business? Was it Hillary or Kamala?
I don't remember.
It was one of them. But we can't talk about ICE detaining and deporting migrants here without talking about the root causes of mass migration. Yeah. But the other thing that CBP said was, because I asked them, what percentage of the people that you stop are actually quote unquote criminals or committing a crime outside of coming to the U.S.? And they said much less than 10%, right? And they were being generous, because I've heard numbers about, like 95 or more of the percent of the people who come are coming seeking asylum. So we're talking about 5%. Let's just be generous. 5% of people coming here may be coming to do harm, right? And let's scale that to 5% of people in communities. Because what I've seen in my lifetime in New York City, Black, Latino, or otherwise, most people just want to fucking chill, man. Like we want to go to school, we want to work, we want to be in community, we want to live our lives. We're not bothering anyone. And then you have someone like Stephen Miller leading all this ICE stuff, and I'm sure you heard his speech at Charlie Kirk's memorial.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is like
lifted from some Goebbels. I mean, he's a plagiarist too. I mean, that's the thing with the fascists.
But it's like
lazy.
It's like who is your enemy, dog? Like no one wants no smoke. We just want to live our lives.
But this guy
you're coming after us.
This guy, you can find a video of him as a teenager, like espousing torture and being angry at
but
Latino.
He's the one running
right?
this ICE stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a video of him at like some school event on a microphone screaming about why do we have to pick up our trash because we have janitors to do it for us. This is the kind of person that gets off on humiliating people. And we're I'm curious about this because I saw Hakeem Jeffries the other day declined to basically say that he thinks Trump is deteriorating mentally. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't do that. If I were him, I would try to take political shots because they don't play by any rules. But like, that's just the tip of the iceberg, obviously. Mm-hmm. But Stephen Miller is basically the president right now. Like that's what it feels like to me.
Him and J.D. Vance and
Russ Vought.
The others, yeah.
And it just feels like Trump is there, and you were reading that Grover Norquist or relaying that earlier, Sam, this idea that we just need a warm body who can sign tax breaks for the rich.
Yeah. And executive orders, right?
Yep, and knows how to use a pen, or Trump uses a Sharpie. And that seems to be where we're at right now. Like there's this rudderlessness and maybe not rudderlessness, that's on our end, but there's clearly, it seems like the full-on fascists have taken the wheel, and Trump is along for the ride because he just wanted to get out of jail running this time.
Very true, and he obviously has his own, alignment to, the ideology of white supremacy over the course of his career and his dad's career, and so he's right there with them. But yeah, man, I hate to be redundant, but it's a scary time, and I know we're going to get to what's happening in New York and what's happening in other places. I mean, if the people aren't going to stand up and take back our democracy now, I don't know what we're waiting for. Like this is the moment to do it, and it's not just with voting. Obviously, that's important. But it's with organizing, it's with our intellectual resources, our capital, our time, our building of community. I mean, now is the time to push back relentlessly on all of it. And if this thing has any chance of surviving, we'll see in 2026 and 2028 what that looks like. But this is some scary stuff, man. There's some scary stuff.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.